Calder always said art should feel dangerous. He didn't mean to prove that by humming a love song in our kitchen, one I'd never heard before, while stirring almond milk into his coffee like he was auditioning for a commercial about organic emotional detachment. I was halfway through narrating a chapter of a romance audiobook in my home booth, giving life to a fictional couple who, unlike us, actually liked each other, when I heard him. Humming. Soft, dreamy, romantic, like the soundtrack of a proposal scene, except I was pretty sure I hadn't been cast in this version. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I paused the recording, leaned back in my chair, and listened. I know Calder's creative moods. I've endured them through late-night guitar loops, lo-fi beats made from kitchen utensil percussion, and something he once called experimental breathing patterns that sounded like he was hyperventilating through a harmonica. But this hum was different. It had intent, it had history, and worst of all, it had familiarity I wasn't part of. I walked out of my booth and leaned on the doorframe, just far enough to pretend I was casual. Calder didn't see me at first. He stood in front of our open fridge, humming the same soft verse and tapping the door with his foot like a metronome. I cleared my throat. He froze, then played it off with his usual grin. "Hey, babe. Didn't hear you." "New song?" I asked. "Just a hook I'm building," he said. "Studio vibes. Not finished." He said it too fast. Calder talks slow when he's honest. He saves fast for lying, bragging, or explaining why the car payment is late again, even though his bank account allegedly contains royalty magic. "Nice," I said, because sarcasm is best served lukewarm. "Catchy." "Who's the lucky audience?" He shrugged the way men shrug when they want the conversation to die before it starts. Then he walked out, with his coffee, and a kiss on my cheek that was more technical than affectionate, just enough to prevent questions, not enough to answer any. I pretended to accept it, but my narrator brain clicked into chapter 1 of a thriller mode. Suspicion introduced. Seeds planted, reader hooked. The playlist showed up that night. Spotify notification, Calder More Music shared a playlist with you. Title, Studio Vibes Only. Cover, black background, white text, generic enough to seem professional. Description, work in progress, don't judge yet. Oh, I was absolutely judging. The first few tracks were what I expected. Ambient guitar loops, synth pads, soft drums. Then halfway down the list, a song titled Our Song. Cute. Except I hadn't heard it, and I definitely hadn't co-owned the hour in question. The song itself started sweet, guitar, soft harmonies, but the lyrics hit like a slow-motion slap. References to inside jokes I didn't know, memories I wasn't present for, particular details involving a motel balcony and rain on vinyl seats. I've never been to a motel balcony with Calder. We barely go to Target without a coupon. I replayed it 3 times, not because I enjoyed it, but because I was looking for myself in it and finding a ghost that wasn't shaped like me. The background vocal giggle in track 2 sealed it. I know that sound is not mine. My laugh is lower, throatier, not the breathy giggle of a woman who's still auditioning to be adored. Then came the glitch. While streaming to the kitchen speaker, the playlist cover art updated in real time. The new image froze me. Calder in the recording booth, smiling down at a brunette resting her head on his shoulder. Her hair covered half her face, but not the part that showed how comfortable she was with him. The caption under the playlist changed too. For us? Always. I didn't press pause. I pressed stillness. Pure, wordless, calculated stillness. If life gives you a plot twist, you don't scream. You take notes, because chapter 3 needs suspense. I backed out of the app, locked my phone, and stared out the window of our perfect suburban kitchen, where the lawn was trimmed. The neighbors waved on schedule, and secrets behaved like weeds, growing where nobody could see but never by accident. Then I scheduled my own moment. I hit the voice memo app and recorded a 90-second statement in the same tone I used to narrate scenes where the heroine has stopped crying and started sharpening her intelligence. Hi, Calder. This is the only time you will hear me this calm. I've listened to the playlist. I saw the cover. I know what it means. I'm not giving you a speech. I'm giving you terms. I listed the asset split, the deadlines, the new living arrangements, my rights to the apartment, the car, the joint royalties, and my complete refusal to host a dramatic argument he could later call inspirational content. I ended it like a professional reading a very polite threat. Press play. Lawyer CC'd. No screaming, no tears, no trembling, just clarity you can't argue with. Then I saved the memo and labeled it Track 11. The next morning, I woke up before Calder, sat in the driveway in my car, and synced my phone to the Bluetooth. The playlist auto-loaded. Except this time, I saw something else. The playlist was public, and the Our Song cover was visible to anyone following him. He wasn't hiding it. He was wearing it like a talent badge. I don't know what stung more, the betrayal or the laziness of the betrayal. If you're going to cheat, at least password protect the playlist. Put in some effort, respect the craft. I watched the sunlight reflect off the windshield and thought, okay, no meltdown, no dramatic confrontation in the kitchen. That's the wife I was taught to be, not the wife I currently am. I hit record again. Optional update memo. I'm still calm, which should terrify you more than anger. Then I drove to the grocery store as if nothing had happened. When I passed Tessa, our neighborhood gossip queen, she waved and asked, "You look focused. Working on a new project?" "Oh," I said, smiling. "You'll hear it soon. It's a collaboration." She blinked. She thinks she's the one who knows everything first, not this time. Calder came home late that night. He smelled like studio coffee and nerves disguised as confidence. He tossed his keys in the bowl, kissed me on the forehead and said, "Long day. We're close to finishing the track." "We?" I asked. He fumbled. "Greg and I." "Greg doesn't giggle in the background of your romantic ballads," I said. He froze. Not full-body stillness, just the kind where the eyes flicker through excuses like flashcards. "What?" he said, too flat to be innocent. "I like the cover art. Very cozy. Which motel balcony was that?" His voice cracked just slightly, not with guilt, with fear of exposure. Calder is not afraid of losing love, only losing admiration. "Okay, I can explain," he said. "No need," I replied. "Track 11 explains everything." "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "you'll listen to it soon, and so will your friends." I walked away before he could respond. Timing is everything in narration. You don't stay for the reply. You let the reader feel the anticipation. Upstairs, I sat in my booth, opened the script for my next chapter, and started narrating a line about a heroine who finally sees her life clearly. But I wasn't thinking about fiction. I was thinking about airdropping a playlist to a group chat titled Producer's Brain Trust. Because if Calder wants an audience, I'll give him one, and they won't clap. That night, while he showered, I checked his phone. Before you judge, I didn't guess his code. He uses the same passcode he used on his bike lock in high school. He once called it nostalgic. I call it convenient. There she was, Mara Ellis, the mysterious M contact saved with a star emoji. Voice memo attachments, heart reactions, audio waveforms titled things like Take 4, Us. She sent him a selfie, studio headphones around her neck, his hat on her head. My heart didn't break. It reorganized itself. I screenshotted everything, then forwarded the files to myself in an email labeled tax records. No scandal, just organization. When Calder came to bed, he wrapped an arm around me like reflex. I stared at the ceiling and thought, I'm narrating his fall, and he doesn't even know he's in the audiobook yet. He mumbled, Love you. I didn't answer. I just waited for him to drift off, because tomorrow I would be inserting track 11 into his perfect little world, like a final chord nobody saw coming. Not a scream, not a slap, not a scene, a memo, a reminder. A remix he didn't get to approve, and that, I thought, is better than any chorus. Some women get revenge by keying cars, some by torching wardrobes. I am a narrator by profession. My revenge will have structure, rhythm, layered meaning, and a final callback line that will haunt him every time a speaker turns on. Tomorrow, I share the playlist. Tomorrow, the suburbs get a front row seat. Tomorrow, Calder learns that the quiet wife is just the opening paragraph. The real story starts now. The thing about narrating audiobooks for a living is that you learn how to hear subtext. Real life doesn't come with chapter titles or dramatic music cues, but people absolutely speak in genres. Calder speaks in indie romance when he's charming, in tragic artist drama when he's guilty, and in half-baked sci-fi metaphors when he's trying to sound profound. This morning, he spoke in what I would categorize as panicked sitcom husband who hasn't realized the episode is already over. He made pancakes. He only makes pancakes when he's trying to prove he's wholesome. He also used almond flour, which is his version of self-flagellation. The kitchen smelled like desperation and fake syrup. You want some? He asked. I already ate, I said, even though I hadn't. Hunger is temporary. Power is lasting. He nodded, trying to look casual, but his eyes kept flicking to me like I was a ticking suitcase in an airport. I could see the questions orbiting his brain. Did she listen to the whole playlist? Did she talk to anyone? Did she see the studio receipts? Why did she smile like that last night? I didn't help him. I just poured coffee, took my time, sipped, and walked out without a word. If silence were a sport, I'd be headed to nationals. When I got to my booth, I opened my current project, a cozy mystery set in Vermont with a widowed baker, solving crimes using pie-related intuition. The heroine lives in a town where everyone pretends to like each other while secretly loathing each other. In other words, Willow Ridge Estates, with more flannel. I hit record, narrated the line. People always reveal themselves when they think they're safe, and paused just long enough to enjoy how author me was high-fiving narrate to me across dimensions. Before I hit the next line, I pulled up my laptop and opened the audio files I'd forwarded myself the night before. Audio messages from Mara to Calder. Soft, breathy, intimacy-coated little notes like, "Miss you already," and "Your chord's still stuck in my head." She sounded 12 emotionally and 30 strategically. The dangerous age, legal, hopeful, and convinced men with guitars are portals to stardom. I played one clip through my studio monitors, not loudly, just enough to let my ears study the shape of her voice. High pitch, polished vowels, the kind of tone that auditions for reality, shows and loses in the finals, but gets a sympathetic montage. I had to give her credit. She'd selected her target well. Calder loves an unfinished woman he can develop. I saved every file in a folder titled Charitable Donations, because I am donating these recordings to the future court of public opinion. Around noon, I went for a walk. Not because I needed air, but because I needed an audience. In our neighborhood, stepping outside with a neutral expression is equivalent to a press conference. So, I put on sunglasses, let my face settle into elegant indifference, and strolled down the sidewalk like a senator whose scandal hasn't leaked yet. It took exactly 90 seconds before I heard the tap-tap sprint of Tessa Green's flip-flops behind me. "You didn't answer my text last night," she said, breathless with gossip muscle. "I muted everyone," I replied. "Everyone, even me." "Especially you. You'd panic if I sneezed twice in a row." She squinted at me like she was scanning for emotional residue. "Is something going on? You look focused." "I am," I said, Think of it as a professional project with a marital subplot. Her eyes widened the way only a caffeine-fueled suburban woman's eyes can. Are you two okay? Define okay. I smiled. That was enough. Tessa would now build theories, group text theories, and probably host a brunch labeled Accidental Support Circle. Let the rumors simmer. They're seasoning for later. Back home, I checked the shared budgeting app. Joint expenses, groceries, utilities, gas, $182.50 at Music Town Studio, labeled MISC Vocal Booth Rental, and a $47 charge from a diner I'd never been to at 1:24 a.m. Calder doesn't eat after midnight. Mara probably does. She looks like a girl who orders fries to seem low maintenance, then eats 3 and packs the rest for later inspiration. I tagged the studio charge fraudulent duet, not illegal, just accurate. Then I exported the budget report to a PDF and sent it to our shared email with the subject, documentation, creative expenditures. I wasn't sending it for Calder. I was sending it for the future version of me who will be nodding at her attorney while sipping sparkling water. At 3:47 p.m., Calder texted, "Can we talk tonight?" I replied, "Sure. Schedule it. 8 p.m. Kitchen table. Bring honesty. Optional but encouraged." He sent an ellipsis typing bubble, then nothing. The digital equivalent of him staring at a wall. Good. By 5, I was in the car outside the studio pulling off my first unofficial reconnaissance mission. Not dramatic, no trench coat or binoculars, just a woman in a Honda Civic with a cold brew and resting narrator voice. I watched the entrance. Calder arrived 15 minutes later. He wasn't alone. Mara got out of the passenger seat. She was wearing Calder's hoodie. The same hoodie he used to say, "Smells like home." Now it smelled like plot development. They walked inside, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, but orbiting each other's gravity. It was subtle, but I've narrated enough romance novels to know the space between bodies is where the real confessions live. I didn't confront them. That wasn't my scene. My scene was later. Instead, I opened my phone, pulled up the memo I'd recorded, and listened back. Calm, smooth, razor disguised as ribbon. It wasn't angry, it was surgical. That memo wasn't revenge. It was step 1. When I got home, Tessa was watering her succulents near her porch. She waved like I was on parade. "Any news?" she asked. "It's coming," I said. "I'm producing something." She clasped her hands like a church aunt receiving prophecy. "I knew it. You've got that look." "What look?" "The look of a woman who already bought the confetti but hasn't told anyone what the party is for." She wasn't wrong. At 8 p.m., Calder sat at the kitchen table exactly as instructed. He had that anxious posture men get when they're trying to look open without actually being open. Palms flat, elbows in, shoulders tense like a student bracing for a quiz. "Ilyana," he started, "I feel like you've misunderstood." "No," I said. "You misunderstood. You thought I'd react emotionally before thinking strategically. That was your first mistake." He blinked. "Can I explain?" "You can try, but I should warn you. I already have hard evidence and a recorded statement ready to attach to legal filings, so whatever you say now is mostly for character development." His face did a thing, somewhere between guilt, performance, and the realization that I was already 5 moves ahead. "It's complicated," he said. "It's predictable," I corrected. "I never meant to hurt you." That line is for people who accidentally back into someone's mailbox, not men who curate playlists with mistresses. He stared at me like I was supposed to cry, like I was supposed to ask what she has that I don't, like I was supposed to demand explanations that don't change outcomes. "You don't seem upset," he finally said. "Oh, I'm upset," I replied. "I'm just not disorganized." Then I pulled out my phone, opened Spotify, and played track 11. I watched it land. His face changed shape. shock, horror, humiliation, comprehension, flashing across him like someone was scrolling moods too fast. My voice echoed through the kitchen. Asset split, apartment rights, royalties distribution, 30 days to remove personal items, no contact without counsel present. Calder's mouth opened, but sound refused to join him. I waited until the memo ended, then paused the track. That, I said, is part 1. Part 1? He croaked. Oh yes. See, artists release work in phases now. Engagement, teasers, rollout. You're making a spectacle out of this. No, Calder. You made a spectacle. I'm just handling post-production. His jaw flexed. You can't just... I already did. And tomorrow, your playlist updates globally. Don't do that, he said, panic cracking through. Then you should have picked a private playlist. I stood, took my coffee mug, and walked out. I didn't slam the door. Only amateurs slam things. Later that night, I opened the playlist and uploaded track 11. Then I set it to public collaboration so no one could claim I hacked anything. I simply contributed. One more step. I shared the playlist to his music producer group chat with the caption, Track 11 is the real remix. I hit send, watched the status go from delivered to seen. Then I put my phone down, brushed my teeth, and went to bed. Revenge isn't loud, it's persistent, and I'm just warming up. The next morning began with the sound of Calder's phone vibrating like an angry bee inside a tin can. Not one vibration, many. Rapid, panicked. Group chat chaos has its own rhythm, and it was playing a full percussion set at 7:14 a.m. He didn't know I was awake. I'd mastered the art of still breathing. Narrators know how to disappear into a room while fully present in it. I watched through barely opened eyes as he grabbed his phone, saw the notifications, and sat bolt upright in bed like someone who just discovered gravity applies to relationships too. He didn't say anything. He just stared at the screen, then at me, then back to the screen, like I might reverse time with a shrug. His silence was the kind that means, how do I fix this? Not, how do I apologize? I stretched, yawned, gave him the softest, most polite good morning I've ever delivered, and walked out of the room before he could ask the first question I would never answer. I didn't owe him answers. I owed him consequences. By 8 a.m., track 11 had been played 67 times, not by me, by his friends, by his collaborators, by the people who think artistic integrity means pretending not to cheat during song mixing. Someone in the group chat had added a new message, "You good, man?" followed by a popcorn emoji. You know you're in trouble when your audience isn't even pretending to be neutral. Another message, "She just took producer credit, bro." And then, that memo sounded very organized. They weren't wrong. If Calder thought I'd melt, he'd forgotten I make a living performing the voices of people who only appear fragile before the plot twist. I sat at the table with my coffee, listened to the toaster gently hiss, and watched the blue message bubbles on his screen reflected in the stainless steel kettle. He wasn't just caught, he was being reviewed. That's worse. Guilt is manageable. Public embarrassment is an extinction event for the ego. He finally spoke. "Ilyana, what did you do?" The way he asked it was telling. Not why, not how could you. Just, what did you do? Like I was the one breaking vows. "I participated," I said. "In what?" "In the playlist. It was public, remember? A collaboration. I simply added my contribution." "You shared it with my friends." "I shared it with your colleagues," I corrected. "Friends don't sit through 3-hour monologues about drum compression. That's business trauma bonding." He ran a hand through his hair. He always does that before he lies or makes excuses. This time, he looked like even he didn't believe himself enough to start. "You're overreacting," he said. "There it is," I said, tapping the table like a game show buzzer. the classic script line. You're overreacting. Doesn't work on women who read contracts. You made me look. I didn't make you look anything. You performed. I uploaded. You're destroying my reputation. No, I'm distributing your behavior. While Calder paced the kitchen, I opened my laptop and checked messages of my own. The playlist was now being shared independently. Someone from his group chat forwarded it to their manager, who forwarded it to someone with a podcast who had already messaged me. Would you be open to talking about artistic ownership and modern relationships? We're doing a segment. Not yet, I typed. Let the story breathe first. Tension earns interest. I didn't need to rush. I already set the fuse. The explosion was performing itself. At 11 a.m., I drove to the studio. Not to confront Calder, he was too busy doing PR CPR on his ego, but because I had paperwork to submit. The receptionist looked up. I introduced myself, politely signed the necessary documents to revoke my guarantor's signature from Calder's equipment lease, and watched as the system automatically flagged his account. Just to confirm, the receptionist said, without the cosigner, the current lease will be frozen until full payment is provided. That's correct, I said, which means no access until it's resolved. She nodded with that neutral customer service sympathy that hides amusement. Do you want a receipt? Oh, I said, smiling. I'll keep my copy in the playlist folder. On my way out, I saw Greg, Calder's closest friend, longtime collaborator, and unofficial enabler. He froze mid-step, like a man who just realized the bear has noticed him. You're here, he said. Observation skills on point, Greg. Proud of you. He looked nervous, not guilty. Nervous, meaning he wasn't shocked Calder cheated, just shocked I responded at higher volume. Look, I don't want to be in the middle. You're already in the middle, I said. Front row, center section, free ticket. He gulped. He said it was just music stuff. Music, the universal code word for bad decisions. I didn't know it was that serious. It always gets serious when someone assumes they're the only one smart enough to write the narrative. Greg had no reply. Cowards rarely do when the sentences finally put them in focus. By afternoon, Calder started damage control. Not fixing the relationship, no, but trying to clarify context with industry people. His favorite move, a mass text saying, "It was just artistic brainstorming." Someone replied, "Track 11 didn't sound like brainstorming." Someone else, "If that was brainstorming, your brain needs a legal department." I screenshotted it all. If he wanted to fight the public angle, I would bring receipts. Literal receipts. Studio rental charges labeled with romantic emojis. At 2:13 p.m., my phone buzzed. Email notice. Studio booking confirmation. Ilyana Moore. 6:09 p.m. That's right. I didn't just void his lease, I booked it. Let him see what it feels like when someone else occupies his world. Before heading there, I stopped at a used music shop and hired a session guitarist named Trent, who described himself as moderately well-adjusted and paid in cash. Perfect. I gave him the lyrics to my acoustic track titled Royalty-Free Cheetah and said, play it like you just got left on red by a musician who thinks he's deeper than he is. He nodded like that was the most normal instruction he'd heard all week. At the studio, I walked in with purpose and an iced matcha, like a woman who has already forgiven herself for not forgiving anyone. The engineer, a quiet man named Jonah, had read the playlist. He didn't say anything, but he gave me a look that said, I am spiritually on your side, and also this is excellent radio. We recorded the track in 2 takes, my voice calm and warm, the lyrics precise, every line a scalpel. You tuned your heart to someone else, forgot the song you wrote at home, I put your chorus on a shelf, and kept the parts I own alone. Not rage, not grief, just artistic accounting. When we finished, Jonah said, do you want reverb or do you want realism? Realism, I said. Let him hear every word with no place to hide. He smiled. That's the sharpest request I've ever had. I left with the mastered file on a USB in my pocket. Trent fist bumped me on the way out. We respect a clean execution. I was barely 2 blocks from the studio when Calder called. Not texted, not voice memoed. Called. That's how you know he was panicking. He risked an actual conversation. I let it ring, because suspense is more powerful than response. He called again, and again. Then he texted, "Take track 11 down, please. We can talk, we can fix this." I replied, "Track 11 is locked. Track 12 is in progress. Would you like to pre-save?" He sent 3 long messages, each more frantic than the last. I didn't open them. Message previews exist for a reason, to let you know when someone is spiraling without inviting them into your piece. At 6:55 p.m., as the sun dipped behind the row of perfect suburban houses, I stood in our driveway and watched Calder pull up. He got out of the car, looking like a man whose life had turned into a reaction thread. "You're ruining everything," he said. "No, Calder, I'm revealing everything. Big difference. You're making me look horrible." "You made you look horrible. I just gave the public better lighting. You don't understand what this will do to my brand." "Your brand is a person," I said, "and that person curated a romantic playlist starring a woman who isn't his wife." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Words were trying to form but didn't have the structural support of logic. "Can't we just handle this privately?" "You handled the relationship privately. The betrayal was public, so now the consequences get the same venue." "You're not this cold," he said. "No, I'm this honest." He looked at me like he'd never seen me before, which in a way was true. He'd met the narrated version of me. The even-toned, patient, agreeable woman who paused for emotional beats and softened confrontations. He hadn't met the editor. The editor doesn't rewrite. The editor removes you. At 8 p.m., just for good measure, I attached the studio lease revocation receipt to the budgeting app and labeled it Royalty Redistribution. I wanted it documented in every possible digital corner. Digital trails are harder to erase than guilt. Then I uploaded my acoustic track to the playlist as track 12, Royalty-Free Cheetah, Acoustic Cut, and watched the listener count climb. Calder's face when he saw it might be one of the greatest silent films ever performed. He stood in the doorway, jaw tense, eyes wide, hands open, like he wanted to hold the air and squeeze an explanation out of it. "You recorded a diss track." "It's not a diss," I said. "It's documentation set to music." "You're ending my career." "No, Calder, I'm archiving it." The playlist's comment section filled fast. Producers, fans, strangers, all with some variation of, "This is historic," and "She did this while staying calm?" Terrifying in the most impressive way. Someone wrote, "She narrated his cancellation like a bedtime story." Another, "Track 11 might be the most polite destruction I've ever heard." One more, "If she drops a track 13, he should change his name and move." Noted. By midnight, Calder had barricaded himself in his home office, alternating between calls and pacing. At some point, he said the sentence every guilty man eventually says, "You're taking this too far." To which I responded, without looking up from my laptop, "No, Calder, you took it too lightly." Then I adjusted my mic, opened a fresh recording file, and spoke the line that will begin track 13. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop speaking softly. He froze. That sentence was not a warning. It was a promise. And promises, unlike playlists, do not get deleted. Tomorrow, the sponsors pull out. Tomorrow, Mara gets her own spotlight, just not the kind she dreamed of. Tomorrow, track 13 drops, and I'm not even out of chapters yet. Fallout looks different depending on who caused the fire. Calder handled it the way all self-proclaimed creative geniuses do, by pretending the ruin around him was a misunderstood installation piece. He paced, he muttered, he made strategy notes in a journal that was 80% doodles of microphones and 20% phrases like rebrand and public perception, salvageable. He wasn't trying to make amends. He was trying to repair his reflection. Meanwhile, I ate a bagel and watched the storm the way a documentarian watches migrating birds, fascinated, detached, and aware that nature always punishes those who ignore seasons. Calder thought loyalty was weatherproof. Turns out it was seasonal, and he forgot to prepare for winter. The first email hit his inbox at 9:12 a.m. Subject line, sponsorship termination notice. The brand that had plastered his face on their wireless headphone campaign no longer wanted to be associated with personal controversy affecting brand alignment. Translation, we like art, not scandal. At 9:37, a second sponsor pulled out. At 10:04, a third sent a, "We wish you the best in your future endeavors" message, which is corporate for, "Go deal with your choices privately." No yelling from Calder, just that strange, fragile quiet of a man who finally realizes gravity applies to him too. By noon, he closed himself in his office and tried calling Greg. I heard every word through the door. "Bro, you've got to back me up. Tell them it was artistic. Tell them it was temporary." Long pause. Then, "What do you mean you had no idea she'd go this far?" Another pause. "Man, do not say she warned you. That isn't helpful right now." A beat. "I can't believe you're siding with her." Silence. Then the call ended. A creative partnership had been paused by reality. While Calder dealt with the professional implosion, I focused on Mara. Not with jealousy. I don't envy someone who settled for half a man and a quarter of a conscience. I just wanted her to feel the perimeter of the mess she helped build. Not pain, just consequence. Step 1, I found her Instagram. Of course she had an Instagram. Her entire identity was arranged in pastel grids, matcha lattes, shots of her pretending to write lyrics in public, a dozen carefully staged, candid behind-the-scenes photos where she wasn't looking at the camera but very much aware of it. And then there was the picture that told me everything I needed. Her brand-new white sedan parked in front of the studio, captioned, "Hard work pays off." Hard work didn't pay for that car. Joint account funds did. I smiled, a calm, narrator-approved smile. Then I drove to the nearest hardware store. Not for anything destructive. No slashing, no smashing, nothing illegal or dramatic enough to get featured on a neighborhood watch page. Just glitter. A bag of ultra-fine, impossible to remove, legacy-level glitter in cosmic fuchsia. I also picked up a pack of tiny heart stickers and a permanent marker. It was time for a small art project. Her car was parked exactly where I expected, in front of her building, in the spot reserved for residents only, which she clearly felt described her because her ego didn't have a lease restriction. No witnesses, no cameras. Just that smug white car sunbathing in the afternoon light, waiting for validation. I didn't key it. I didn't dent it. I didn't touch the paint. I popped the tire caps, just the caps, and filled the valves with glitter. Then I screwed the caps back on. The next time she drove, the glitter would disperse into the air vents, the floor, the trunk. Every time a tire got checked or refilled, the mechanic would be showered in sparkles. It wouldn't break the car. It would ruin the dignity. Before I left, I drew a tiny heart on the windshield and wrote in small, neat letters, "Joint funds, Chisu, joint consequences." Then I put a heart sticker next to the message, because nothing says I'm not angry, I'm expressive, like stationery supplies. And I walked away. No vandalism charge, no confrontation. Just an invisible fuse waiting for her to discover it in the most inconvenient way possible. like on the freeway or at a gas station, or with her new influencer friend filming a vlog in the front seat. Art is more satisfying when it lingers. Next move, a casual encounter. I found out where she accidentally runs into inspiration every Tuesday, an independent cafe where the pastry sizes are inversely related to the price, and every drink comes with a motivational quote stamped onto the lid like the universe is now a lifestyle brand. She was there. Laptop open, sunglasses inside, hair in a messy bun that would have required 3 different products to look natural. She was typing something with the earnest, shallow focus of a woman, convinced the world was waiting for her lyric sheet. I walked in, ordered a tea, waited for the timing to ripen, then glanced toward her table like I was surprised to see her. "Oh," I said, giving her the tone reserved for discovering gum on a shoe. "You're real." She blinked, confused, then recognized me. Her whole posture changed. Shoulders tightened, smile flickered. Her eyes did the wide, innocent, I had no idea act. "Hi," she said, too brightly. "You're Ilyana, right?" "Correct. You're Mara, yes? The collaborator, the inspiration, the muse." "I didn't mean to cause. You weren't meaningful enough to cause anything. You were background vocals." Her jaw twitched. I smiled kindly. "No hostility, just clarity. I don't blame you for having no standards. I blame him for lowering his." She stiffened. That was the first strike. Then I slid a USB drive across the table. Metallic blue, labeled Royalty Split, in my neat handwriting. "It's blank," I said, "but the potential is thrilling, isn't it?" She didn't touch it. "You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to understand what's coming. Just know the plot is already written." I stood, dumped my tea lid quote into the trash, "Bloom where you're planted," who writes these, and walked out before she could find a sentence sharp enough to throw back. She wouldn't. She didn't have the vocabulary. That same night, while she was probably journaling about toxic women silencing other women, I paid a small visit to her apartment building. She lived in a newly renovated complex with a keyless entry system and a breaker box on the exterior wall. The kind of breaker box that's never locked because the landlords assume no one cares enough to touch it. I cared. I waited until her Instagram story confirmed she was live streaming from inside, ring light on, headphones on, performing a late-night studio vibes session for her 1,700 followers. She called them her fam. I called them her unresolved desire for validation. Then I flipped the breaker. Instant blackout. Her live stream cut off mid-sentence, video gone, comments stuck on. And what happened? The kind of glitch that bruises an ego more than a bruise ever could. I turned the power back on 30 seconds later. Not long enough to cause damage. Just long enough to make her feel watched. Not unsafe, just uncentered. Her influencer identity relied on control. I introduced a little static. Meanwhile, the neighborhood buzzed. Tessa came to my door with a casserole, even though nobody asked for one. "I just wanted to see how you're holding up," she said, which meant, "I want the next episode early." "I'm productive," I said. "My calendar has never been fuller." "Are you okay?" "I'm organized." She nodded like she didn't understand but respected the aura. Then she leaned in and whispered, "Someone said they saw Calder yelling in the parking lot downtown." "Good," I said. "He needs cardio." She blinked. "Should I be worried?" "No. But he should be." Calder confronted me that night, pacing again, more frantic this time. "You flipped her power off?" "Briefly. She survived." "You glitter-bombed her car?" "Technically, the tires did that." "You're humiliating people." "Only the ones who participated willingly." "You're turning into someone I don't recognize." "That's because you met the narrated version of me. You never read the author's notes." He tried to shout, but exhaustion swallowed the volume. He sank into a chair. "You win," he said. "No, I succeed. Winning implies a game. This was documentary footage. I just want things to go back to normal. There is no back. There is only what happens next. That sentence didn't come from anger. It came from evolution. The next morning, Mara posted a long, "I am choosing peace" Instagram story that was clearly written through tears. The problem with choosing peace is that it has to be mutual. Otherwise, it's just performance. Her final slide said, "Some people don't heal, they just hurt back. I'm sending kindness." I replied to it privately, "Heal quietly. You're not the injured party." Then I muted her forever. Compassion doesn't require access. That afternoon, Greg tried to text me. "Hey, can we talk? Off the record?" Off the record is never off the record. I didn't respond. He sent another. "I didn't know he was using joint money. I just thought." I blocked his number. Don't explain a role you played voluntarily. By evening, I could feel a shift. The panic phase was closing. The damage could no longer be undone. The control was fully mine. So I recorded a final note, not for Calder, not for Mara, but for the arc of the story. People think revenge is loud. It isn't. Revenge is patient. Revenge is structured. Revenge waits for the moment when silence is the sharpest possible sound. I saved it, not as a track. Not yet. Just as a promise resting in a folder labeled Endgame. And then I slept. Deep, unbothered, unburdened. Because closure is not something you receive. It is something you write. Calder always believed every crisis could be managed with the right angle, the right lighting, and the right caption. He treated life like a press release. Shape the message, control the narrative, pretend sincerity until it trends. That worked when the stakes were low, when the worst thing he faced was a late upload or an unimpressed sponsor. But this wasn't a PR hiccup. This was structural collapse, and he was still trying to fix it with hashtags and charm. The morning began with what I call the denial rebrand. He posted a video to his followers. Messy hair, sweatshirt, somber lighting. The standard, "I want to speak from the heart" influencer monologue. He didn't mention names, of course. He didn't take responsibility. He just talked about misunderstandings, artistic process, and people who want to see creators fail. Comments did not go as planned. Track 11 was not a misunderstanding. "Your wife is a genius and you should be quiet." Greg already said she wasn't lying. Artistic process doesn't require lying to your spouse, bud. "Sir, just apologize." He deleted the video within an hour, but the internet never deletes anything. People screen recorded, stitched, duetted, analyzed every frame. He wanted sympathy, but he got ratioed. Meanwhile, I was recording a commercial voiceover for an insurance company, the kind where a cheerful narrator assures you that disasters can be avoided with a monthly premium. I nearly laughed mid-line. If only emotional liability policies were real. When I finished the recording, I checked my email. Subject line, "Offer, soundtrack, licensing, inquiry." A production assistant from a streaming drama series wanted to discuss using royalty-free cheetah for a breakup montage scene in Season 2. That was the moment I realized my revenge had evolved into revenue. Calder wasn't the only one in the music business anymore. At noon, the studio manager called him. I didn't hear the call, but I heard the yelling. Apparently, after my guarantor withdrawal, the studio had fully revoked his access. Not just limited his sessions, revoked, like, "You may no longer enter the building," revoked. He stormed into the living room with a printed notice in hand, waving it like a subpoena. "You can't do this," he snapped. "I already did," I replied. "And they did the rest. This is my career." "No, this was your career, past tense." "They told me I need a new guarantor." "Good luck. Maybe ask Mara. I hear she's manifesting abundance." His voice strained. "Do you enjoy ruining me?" No, I enjoy correcting records. You're punishing me. I'm informing you. Informing me of what? That actions have timelines. Yours just caught up. He threw the paper on the counter and walked away, probably to compose another voice memo no one asked for. That afternoon, the twist appeared, not from Calder, but from Greg. He went live on Instagram, which meant he was either drunk, fed up, or trying to rescue his brand before it sank with Calder's. He didn't mention me directly, but he confirmed the rumor circulating in the music forums. Calder had paid for Mara's studio time with joint funds. The charges were disguised as equipment fees, but Greg had been there. He knew. He admitted he didn't say anything because loyalty between friends is complicated. The comments disagreed aggressively. You watched him steal from his wife. That's not loyalty, that's accessory. You let her bankroll a side project. Nah. Greg tried to justify it, but you can't edit integrity in post-production. He ended the live early after someone asked, "Did she know?" And someone else replied, "She knows now." That clip went viral. Naturally, the internet loves poetic justice, especially when it involves receipts and men cornered by truth. Around 4, I got a text from someone I didn't expect, the director of the podcast I had been invited to weeks earlier. She wanted to feature me on a live panel titled Art Ownership and Personal Audits When the Muse Fights Back. I didn't confirm yet, not because I was unsure, just because timing is the difference between a dramatic moment and a historic one. I had one more thing to do first. At 6, I returned to the studio, not as a narrator, not as a jilted wife, but as the person who now legally held 70% rights to any song produced during the marriage. I wasn't there to argue. I was there to claim. Jonah, the sound engineer from the acoustic session, greeted me like an ally in a quiet revolution. "You here to record?" "No," I said. "I'm here to audit." We walked into Control Room B, where all of Calder's unreleased files were stored. Drafts, stems, vocal tracks, half-finished projects, all locked under his artist folder, but the lease contract had both our names on it. That gave me access. Not to delete, just to document. I copied everything onto a drive labeled Marriage Master Files and signed the removal form. When Jonah handed me the clipboard, he said, "I've never seen someone end a story this cleanly." "Good endings are just well-planned middles," I said. On my way out, he added, "If you ever do a full album, call me." He meant it. I filed that away. Not as a compliment, as a possibility. When I pulled into the driveway, Calder was waiting, pacing again. This time, there was no rage, just disorganized fear. "You took my files?" he asked. "Our files," I corrected, "by law and by timeline. You're tearing my life apart." "No, I'm sorting it. You're confusing consequence with cruelty. You're enjoying this. I'm documenting this. You're planning something else, aren't you?" "Yes," I said, because there was no point in pretending. Big moments require finale energy. "What more can you possibly do?" "That," I said, picking up my bag, "is what makes it exciting." By 9, the house was quiet, and the playlist had a new comment section war happening. Someone created a fan account for me. Someone else started a chain thread titled Favorite Track 11 Quotes. A music blog wrote an article calling me the suburban whistleblower queen of audio retribution. I didn't expect any of that, but I wasn't mad about it. At midnight, I opened a new recording file, not for track 13, for something bigger, something live, something public, a recording that wouldn't just expose Calder, but would put him in a room with his own words, played back like the world's most personal documentary. Because revenge isn't about destruction. Revenge is about playback. The world was ready for the final track, but the finale had to take place somewhere more dramatic than a playlist. I knew exactly where. The studio, the one I booked, with the audience he used to think belonged to him. His story wasn't over, mine wasn't done, and tomorrow we go live. The studio didn't feel like a place for music anymore. It felt like a courtroom built from soundproof walls, cables for veins, and speakers waiting to deliver sentence. I walked in first because the person with the truth always arrives before the person who's still rehearsing excuses. My footsteps echoed, not dramatically, just realistically, the way sound does when a room is too used to lies and isn't sure how to hold honesty yet. The control booth lit up in soft blues and greens, a kind of artificial calm, like studio equipment is always pretending nothing is wrong. I didn't sit down right away. I stood in the center of the room and let the space register me. The last time I'd been here, I recorded a calm acoustic track about betrayal. Tonight I wasn't here to sing. I was here to finish the story. I placed the external drive on the console, the one labeled Marriage Master Files, the drive containing every truth Calder had hoped would stay scattered. The studio monitors waited, that quiet technological patience that makes you feel like the equipment already knows how this will end. Jonah arrived a few minutes later, holding 2 iced coffees and a look that said he had been waiting for this moment, as if it were a premiere. He handed me one. No words, just mutual acknowledgement that narrative justice pairs well with caffeine. "You sure you want it all played?" he asked. Not a warning, just a last call for suspense. "Yes," I said. "No cuts, no adjustments, no edits. Raw truth." "Exactly." He nodded, the way professionals nod when they understand the job may not be pretty, but it will be precise. We queued up the session. I organized the audio clips in the intended order, each one titled with calm, surgical bluntness. Track 1, Financial Lying, Unedited Call. Track 2, She'll Never Notice, Voice Memo. Track 3, Mara Studio Session Flirt, Raw Room Mic. Track 4, Greg Conversation, Clip Extract. Track 5, Track 11, Memo Insert. Track 6, Track 12, Acoustic. Track 7, Final Statement, Playback. I didn't smile. Revenge isn't about smiling. It's about removing the need to. The attendees began to arrive. Quietly at first. No invitation, no flyer, no announcement. But people always show up when honesty is about to burn through pretense. Greg walked in, dressed in the kind of wrinkled shirt that suggested he had been trying to decide all day whether he was guilty, sorry, or just caught. He poured himself water and sat against the wall, like a man who knows fate gave him a chair, not a microphone. A few producers entered too, men and women who had been in Calder's circle long enough to know he always expected applause, but never accountability. Now they were curious what happened when applause left the building. Then Mara arrived. She entered like she thought she was disguising fear with posture. Sunglasses again. Too large. Indoors. I didn't comment. Some people need props when reality strips the script away. She didn't sit. She hovered, always hovering, like someone who wants to belong, but only knows how to attach. Then the clock hit 7:32. The energy shifted. He walked in. Calder didn't look broken. He looked rearranged, like someone who tried to put himself back together, using pieces from the wrong box. His eyes were tired, but not remorseful. His expression was calculated, taking inventory of faces, exits, angles. Even now, he was trying to maintain a brand. He looked at me last. "What is this?" "A listening session," I said. "For what?" "For you." He laughed once, a short, cracked sound, like he thought he was still in a universe where sarcasm worked in place of apology. "You really think this is going to—" "I'm not thinking," I said. "I'm playing. There's a difference." He sat, not because he accepted, but because he understood leaving would look worse. That's when I entered the booth and placed my hand on the console. "Start," I said, and Jonah pressed play. Track 1, his voice, clear, casual, careless, talking to Mara on speakerphone about transferring costs from our joint account, joking about my organized brain, but saying she only checks totals, not categories. Background laughter. His. The room didn't gasp. They didn't need to. Silence is not weakness. Silence is processing. Track 2. A voice memo where he bragged to Greg. I can handle 2 lives. She trusts me. She thinks I'm locked in the studio for art. He said the word trusts, like it was a joke he wrote. Greg sank lower in his chair. He looked like a man who suddenly realized the water he waded in was an ocean and he could not swim. Track 3. A raw studio feed. Him and Mara. Not romantic, not beautiful. Just 2 people sharing an inside joke built on someone else's dignity. The kind of audio no one ever expects to be archived. Calder shifted in his chair, restless, like his body was trying to leave before his mind could figure out how. Then track 4. Greg on the phone, admitting he knew about the funds, but thought it would blow over. Every betrayal has 2 roles, the one who does it and the one who lets it happen. Greg couldn't look at anyone anymore. Then came track 5. My memo. Calm, composed, terms outlined with the precision of a narrator reading a contract disguised as poetry. You could feel the room change, because anger they expect, structure they fear. Track 6 followed, my acoustic track, royalty-free cheetah. No screaming, no dramatic runs, just storytelling in chord form. The room stilled. There is no sound more intimidating than a woman who has already processed what was done to her. Halfway through, Mara stood up, as if moving her body could relocate her shame. She paced, tried to leave, stopped, stayed. The door was open, but so were the eyes watching her. Calder sat frozen, his jaw clenched, his breath uneven, his gaze fixed on the floor like it owed him answers. He didn't interrupt. He didn't yell. The performance was over. No audience left to charm. Then track 7, the final file. My voice again, no music now. A final narration. Some people think silence is surrender, but silence is just preparation. Every story has a narrator, and every narrator decides where the final period goes. I decide mine goes here. When it ended, I didn't look at Calder. I didn't look at anyone. I just said, playback complete. Then I stepped out of the booth. No applause, no confrontation. Just the aftermath of truth, doing what truth always does. Stay. Calder spoke first. Of course he did. Men who perform for audiences don't know how to sit in echo. You think this makes you right? I don't think, I said. I know. You made everything public. No, you made it public. I made it clear. You ruined me. No, you documented you. You're acting like you're perfect. No, I said. I'm acting like I don't lie. He had no reply, because that part wasn't a performance. It was a fact. He stood, as if the floor had rejected him, and walked toward me. Not threatening, just desperate. What do you want from me? Nothing, I said. Wanting something from you is what got me into this mess in the first place. He looked at the board, at the frozen waveform of his own voice staring back at him. A man trapped inside audio. Are we really done? We were done the moment you said she won't notice. Everything after that was closing paperwork. Then I walked past him, past the crowd, past the door, past the history. Behind me, Greg exhaled. Behind him, Mara left. Behind all of them, Calder stayed in the room with his archived truth. I didn't turn back. Narrators do not repeat chapters. They finish them. Outside the studio, the air felt different. Not lighter, not triumphant, just correct. Like a scale finally balanced after someone stopped leaning on it. I didn't rush to my car. I didn't need to flee. People who run still feel chased. I walked because I was done being in any position other than forward. The building behind me hummed with the energy of conversations that would happen without me, stories that would now be told without my effort. That was the beauty of truth, Once released, it self-distributes. I didn't need to supervise its spread. I only needed to let it exist. I made it halfway across the parking lot before I heard footsteps behind me. Not frantic, not aggressive. Just footsteps with hesitation built into the pace. Ilyana. It was Greg. Not surprising. There's always one witness who suddenly wants to switch categories from silent observer to wise commentator. He stopped a few feet away, hands awkwardly shoved into his pockets, like he was trying to find the version of himself that could stand confidently. "You really planned this," he said softly. "Every part of it," I answered. "You always seem quiet." I was quiet, not unaware. He nodded, staring at the pavement like it might offer moral advice. I should have said something. "You didn't," I said, "and that's who you are." "That's not an insult. That's a file label." He swallowed. "You're not even angry at me, are you?" "No, you weren't worth anger. Just classification." That landed. He looked like a man who'd been demoted in a company he didn't realize had performance reviews. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "You know, people are going to turn this into a story about revenge." "It is one," I said. "A well-organized one. But not everyone could have pulled this off. Most people don't read the terms they agree to. I always do." He almost laughed. "Almost, but guilt has a way of short-circuiting humor." "You're going to be fine," he said, like it was a blessing. "I already am." He forced a smile, gave a weak wave, then walked back toward the building, the way people retreat when they realize the spotlight will never return to them. I got into my car, shut the door, and let the quiet settle. Not emotional quiet, strategic quiet, the kind that makes space for the mind to expand into its next phase. The phone buzzed. Not Calder, not Mara, the podcast producer. "Just saw the live stream clips. If you're ready, we want you for the headline segment. In studio, unfiltered." I read it twice, not because I was unsure, but because sometimes life aligns itself with a level of narrative symmetry that even I wouldn't dare script. My reply was simple: book it. Because the difference between revenge and evolution is what you build after the fire, and I wasn't about to retire. I drove home through quiet suburban streets, the same streets where neighbors trimmed lawns, smiled for optics, and texted gossip behind curtains. I used to think the stillness meant safety. Now I understood it was just surface-level choreography. Everyone is always hiding something. Some people just do it with better lighting. My house looked the same from the outside, symmetrical, calm, deceptively domestic. Inside, it was a museum of the last version of my life. But museums are temporary collections. The exhibits change. I unlocked the door and stepped in. Calder wasn't home yet, no surprise. He'd stay at the studio, or at a friend's, or somewhere unfamiliar enough to convince himself he hadn't lost everything permanent. I didn't look around the living room. I didn't stand still and reflect. I walked straight to the office. The paperwork was already prepared. The divorce file, the settlement terms, the legal attachments, the signature lines. It wasn't emotional, it was transactional. Betrayal turns marriage into accounting, and I was very, very good at math. I placed everything in a folder labeled Final Draft and set it on the table where he'd see it immediately. Then I walked upstairs, into what used to be our room. Not anymore. I opened the closet and pulled out the suitcase I'd set aside weeks ago, the one with exactly the clothes I wanted, not the ones I used to wear because blending in felt easier. I packed quietly. No rush, no panic. A woman leaving without argument is the most unsettling exit a man can witness. And just as I zipped the suitcase, I heard the front door open. Calder was home. His footsteps were different now. No pacing, no rhythmic frustration. Just dull movement, shapeless and heavy, the kind that belongs to someone who finally ran out of explanations. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "Ilyana?" Yes. We need to talk. No, you need to listen. He was silent for a moment, and I could already sense his face, lost, but still built for performance. The kind of man who thought what I wanted was apology, not exit. He walked up halfway and stopped where he could see me packing. You're leaving. I'm relocating. We can fix this. No, you can regret it. Those are different verbs. You made me look like a monster. You handed me the material. You didn't have to go this far. You didn't have to test whether I would. That studio thing, that was too much. No, I said, turning to face him. Too much was what you did and expected me to bury. He swallowed the truth like something too large to go down smoothly. I loved you, he said. No, I replied. You loved the version of me that didn't hold consequences. You're walking away from everything. No, I'm walking towards something else. And what is that? Authorship. He stared at me like the word was a language he didn't speak. Then he said the last thing he would ever say to me without paperwork between us. You're not the person I thought you were. I picked up the suitcase. Yes, I said, and that's the mistake that triggered everything. I walked past him. Not fast, not dramatic, just done. A clean exit doesn't need a soundtrack. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a set that had finished filming. I paused at the door, turned back once, not to look at him, but to say the line that closed the chapter. You should learn something from this. What? That I narrate my own ending. Then I left, and this time, he didn't follow. Outside, the night had that strange clarity right before weather changes. I loaded the suitcase into the car, got in, started the engine, and didn't look at the house again. Forward is not a direction once chosen. Forward is a muscle that strengthens every time you refuse to turn around. The final part wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't victory. It was origin. Because some people get ruined by betrayal. Others get rewritten. I didn't drive to a hotel, or a friend's spare room, or any temporary halfway space that felt like pause. I drove to the studio, the same one I had just walked out of, but in a different role, a different hour, a different purpose. Not the studio Calder used, not the one tied to old work, a different building, a newer one. One that had sent me an email earlier in the week that I hadn't responded to until now. Subject, we'd be honored to have you record with us. It wasn't about music, it was about voice. A woman at the front desk recognized me from the playlist drama, not with fan energy, but with respect. That's the difference between spectacle and authorship. Spectacle asks for attention, authorship earns presence. I booked a room under Moore, I said. She checked the system. 3-hour block, full equipment access, podcast and vocal configuration. Wasn't sure if you'd actually show. I always show, I said. I just changed the premise. She smiled, handed me the access card, and added quietly, a lot of women were rooting for you, you know. I wasn't rooting, I said. I was pruning. The room was smaller than the studio where I had confronted Calder. Cleaner, newer, no emotional history embedded in the walls, just gear, room tone, and potential. I set up the mic, put on the headphones, and opened a fresh audio file. Not a song, not a diss track, not a breakup memo. A beginning. I took a breath, not dramatic, not shaky, just steady enough to anchor the next version of myself. Then I spoke. Recording. Chapter 1. No metaphor, no poetry, just truth, unburdened. Not narrated for someone else, not built around someone else's actions, not designed to react, designed to originate. I talked. For an hour, maybe more. Not about Calder, not even about what happened. I talked about authorship, voice, choices, clarity, the kind of silence that grows instead of shrinks. I spoke to the version of myself who once thought calmness and obedience were the same thing. I spoke to the people who listen better than they fight. I spoke to the women who haven't yet realized their stillness isn't weakness. It's the chamber where strategy forms. There was no rage in the recording. There was direction. When I finished, I marked the file. Project, author, session 1. Then I exported it, not to the playlist, not to the internet, to a folder named Beginning, because revenge is an ending, but identity is a sequel. When I finally walked out, the night was fading into early morning. The air held that sharp, quiet chill that only exists between what just happened and what hasn't happened yet. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel wounded. I didn't feel like a phoenix or a warrior or any of the dramatic metaphors people attach to women who refuse collapse. I just felt correct, and that was better. On the drive home, not his home, not ours, just home in the transitional sense, I passed a diner with the light still on. Same one we used to grab fries from at 1 a.m. after late studio sessions. I parked, not to reminisce. Just because hunger is still a thing even when you've just rearranged the architecture of your life. A waitress brought me coffee and didn't ask why I was alone. She didn't need to. Women have a sixth sense for exits we don't speak about, only recognize. She poured, I thanked her, and the world didn't need to be narrated. I checked my phone only once. No messages from Calder. Not anger, not apology, not bargaining, not threats. Silence. Good. He finally understood the truth. Once a narrator leaves the story, the protagonist loses his lines. I finished the coffee, paid, and got back in the car. The sky was turning soft blue. A new day starting, unrequested but inevitable. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, opened the voice memo app, and recorded one final sentence. Not poetry, not punchline, just closing punctuation. End of recording. I hit save. A notification popped up. File saved. End of recording. Final. That was it. No epilogue, no reflection, no future promises, no inspirational bow. Just a woman who finished something and didn't need to explain what came after. Because the story didn't trail off. It ended exactly where she wanted it to.